we'd reached on page 3. Meditate next on a profound path of Guru Yoga. And after making hundreds of very strong, fervent requests, dissolve your visualized Guru into yourself. He's added visualized here. It could be visualized, but the main thing is you feel your Guru, who you feel is your emanation of Buddha, your personal emanation of Buddha, absorbs into yourself here, it says, into you. So it means into your heart chakra. Imagine it merging with your mind. Your mind and the Guru's mind become one. When Lama Yeshe had passed away, some months later, the Sangha were with Lama Zopa Rinpoche in Dharamsala. I can't remember if it was Dharma celebration again, or maybe it was just before Lama Osel's enthronement or sometime. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave this incredibly inspiring, heartfelt praise of Lama Yeshe. And he said something about Lama Yeshe right at the beginning that stuck with me, and I've even written a prayer with using this term there. He said, Lama was the primordial Guru, our primordial Guru. You know what primordial means? From beginningless time. From beginningless time, we have been guided by the omniscient mind. We just didn't. It's like if you've fallen into a hole and you can't get out, and some people are dropping ropes to you to pull you out, and you think of them as serpents and you're swatting them away. That's what we did with the help of that the Buddha's tried to give us, the blessings until now. So you can think of that, my primordial Guru, who's always been leading me, omniscient mind. I'm ready now. I'm going to grab on. Come on down here into my heart. When it says heart, doesn't mean the physical beating heart, right? You know what I mean. It means the heart chakra, which, when we were talking about the breathing meditation, refers to a certain area about the level of the two breasts. In the back, just in front of the spine, there is a nexus where the central channel within which the subtlemost mind resides is encumbered by knots from the two side channels that we imagine when we do the breathing, right? It's called, the channel knots. The heart chakra is particularly difficult to get into because it has more knots than any of the other chakras. So you imagine your heart, you're completely blissful, almost just by that alone, opening up your heart chakra. We have an expression in English, open your heart, right? My heart was open to this or that. So after that, absorb for a while. This is on the last paragraph on the bottom, page 3. Absorb for a while, unwaveringly in that state, which is without the gurgle of appearance making and appearances of this and not that. Do not contrive anything with thoughts such as expectations or worries. This does not mean, however, that you cease all attention as if you had fainted or fallen asleep. Rather, you must tie your attention to the post of mindfulness. Like when you tie a horse, there's something that you're going to tie the horse to keep it from walking or running away, right? So often in the diagrams that indicate the progression to develop shamatha, have you seen those? What's the thing that is being tied? An elephant, the elephant of the mind. So when you tame an elephant, supposedly the first thing you do is you have the chains and you chain it to a post or something for some days until it starts to calm down. And then you can get in closer. It was a wild elephant at first, so that's what you're doing here. Rather, you must tie your attention to the post of mindfulness in order not to wander, and station awareness to alertness to be aware of any mental movement. More or less, a little more clearly than I had expressed before. Or in this other translation by Vola, in that state where you are indistinct from your guru, inseparable from your guru, do not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations, and enter equipoise without the slightest distraction. It is not the cessation of mental activity as when you faint or fall asleep. Begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness and, with alertness, make your mind attentive to any movement. So the crucial thing here is that you begin having made these requests to the Guru absorbing, you try to feel unity with him or her, the mind stream, the primordial Guru, maybe without gender, you know. You have to say he or her. Blessing your mind, opening your mind, opening your heart. And within that state, without any kind of plan of how you're going to, you know, like the mind is going to look this way or that way, or I'm going to do this, just watch, like sitting at the cafe. Just watch the contents of your mind. Begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness and with alertness. Make your mind attentive to any movement. So that doesn't mean movement of your body. It means movement of your mind. Any thoughts, suddenly something, your mind is paying attention to this or that, or moved toward this or that. So going back to Alex's text, sometimes one of these two translations resonates more to me than the other. Firmly tighten the hold of your mindfulness on that which has the essential nature of clarity and awareness, and behold it starkly. Tighten your awareness. So I had mentioned this before. Do you remember when I said tighten? When you're, as an antidote to sinking, you had to sort of tighten your mind. Squeezing attention is called, or tightening attention. It doesn't have anything to do with the body. It's not like at that point you're going, not like that. Just pay attention. You know, like when you're trying to do your income tax returns, and the kids are playing the TV, and someone's playing the radio, and all sirens are going on outside. You just have to let go of them and concentrate, like the watchmaker. I said the watch repair person. Concentrating on this, so tightening your awareness on just this essential nature, clarity and awareness. Remember, clear and knowing. Awareness also means knowing, or as Vola translates, tighten by making taut and look nakedly at the nature of that which is clear and knowing. We try to do. So we have mentioned various, and it will mention various methods to do that. You know, you might say, well, where do you see that nature? Because you've calmed the mind already. We've done the 9-round breathing. Felicity, you missed that this morning. Have you heard that you know how to do that? So that's a prelude. You imagine having made many requests to the Guru comes and absorbs to your heart. So already your mind is somewhat calm, and without any kind of expectation, just watch the clear-like nature of your mind. So there are many ways of doing that, just as we mentioned this morning. Turning your attention away, even when the thoughts are there, seeing the spaciousness, seeing the spaciousness between the thoughts and focusing on that will be coming. Whatever thoughts might arise, recognize them as being that and that. What does she say? What does that mean, that and that? Recognize any conceptual thoughts that arise. He doesn't translate that and that. Alternately, like a jeweler, cut the thoughts off completely, wham, wham, as soon as they occur. This Alex's likes to put sort of colloquial things like that. Recognize any conceptual thoughts that arise. Moreover, like a swordsman in a duel, exert yourself in cutting off whatever conceptual thoughts arise. So this is the essence of several of the methods I mentioned. It means as soon as the thoughts arise, you withdraw your attention away from them. It's not like you as though the thought is out there, you can use something to, like a swordman, to cut it, but cutting off, here it means cutting off your attention to them. Either what, by asking yourself, what's the consciousness that is knowing this? Or let me perceive the clarity of the mind within which this is arising, various methods like this. Wham, wham. Where you got that? Once you have completely cut off these, once you have completely cut these off and have settled your mind, what does that mean? Settled your mind on the clear light nature. You've cut off you're not paying attention to the thoughts, but on the clarity of the mind within which they're arising. Then, without losing mindfulness, relax and loosen up. As has been said, relax and loosen, quote, relax and loosen its firm tightness, and there is the set state of mind, unquote. And elsewhere, when the mind itself, ensnarled in a tangle, loosens up, there is no doubt that it frees itself, unquote. Like these statements, loosen up but without any wandering. So what this is talking about is some statements as you have beginning to try to keep a continuity in the clear light nature of the mind, keep your concentration on that. Sometimes the mind has become a little too withdrawn in, a little too tight. So one has to find, and in so doing, you cause agitation. You cause the mind to be more prone to going off to other things. So you have to loosen just slightly your attention so that agitation is not instigated. And if it becomes too loose, then you fall into the sinking. You have to find a little balance, and that balance between sinking and excitement. If you're too tightly watching the object, it instigates excitement, scattering, due to attachment to something. If in loosening that you go a little too far, so like you lose the object because you're not holding it tightly enough. So that balance is difficult to find, and that's what's being referred to. These two quotes, at least the first one, I think, famous from one of the set of 3 texts from, or 3 core volumes, or the 7 texts of the Mahasiddhas. I think they were written by Saraha. I'm not sure. Maybe the 7 texts referred to 7 different Mahasiddhas. I think it comes from those texts. Relax and loosen its firm tightness, and there is the set state of mind. So it's enigmatic. Sometimes people have misunderstood that, but it's referring to this balance that you try to find between holding the object, and what's the object here? The clarity of the mind. Holding it too tightly, which we don't have that problem yet. We haven't even got that, we haven't even seen it clearly yet. We're trying to get a continuity of that. But once you get a continuity in holding it, if you hold it too tightly, you can instigate excitement. If you let go too much, you can fall into the extreme other fault of sinking. So the example that's sometimes used is of tuning a stringed instrument. I've never played the guitar or anything like that, violin. Or anyone play a stringed instrument? Venerable, did you ever learn? Did you play? Eric?
Guitar and bass.
Guitar and bass. So when you tune them, before you begin performance, I assume, or maybe in between riffs or whatever you call it, there's some tightening or loosening. So do you start from loose, or you start from a little bit tight?
Say, technically start from loose and tune up into, try not to go tight and back down. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But there is, technically you're tuning to a very precise, frequency, but, in like string selection, you are looking for something where it's not prone to snap or
Right.
not have a lot of.
So that's interesting, because I've heard the opposite. What's been explained in the teaching is a little bit opposite from that. So I'm not sure. It says that generally, if the string is completely slack, and you try to tighten from that, you can't quite get the right tension. You have to tighten it a little, and then loosen from there, and then maybe you've gone a little too loose, and then you got to tighten it up again, loosen from that. So the essential point there in terms of practice is we have to begin the practice with a little tightness. You can't be just like, oh yeah, it says, Saraha, these others said, you just loosen up, man. So I'm just not going to try to concentrate on this. I'm just going to sit here loose. You start from a little bit tight, meaning the mind is holding it, and then when you notice that agitation might be caused, you loosen up a little. Maybe you notice in so doing that you begin to lose the clarity of the object, like a little bit of sinking, then you tighten up. It's a sequential thing. If finally you end at something that's like tuned, so to speak. Like the radar station. So the radar is trying to be aware if a missile is coming or some plane is coming. So at first the radar is scanning. And if it senses something, as soon as it senses that, it overshoots a little bit, and then it scans back. Iteratively, do you know what I'm saying? You end up, by overshooting one direction or the other, you end up right on the spot. So that's what we have to learn how to do. Once we begin to have a continuity and the clarity of the mind. Make sense? So in Vola's translation of the root text, it says, moreover, like a swordsman in a duel, exert yourself in cutting off whatever conceptual thoughts arise. This is on page 123 at the top. Having finished cutting them off, rest your mind, and without losing mindfulness, loosen by relaxing. As it is said, and it doesn't say, but it's from either the 3 or the 7 texts, tighten by making taut, loosen by relaxing, and there is where you place the mind. So that's sweet spot. Not too tight, not too loose. What was that bring memory of? Not too hot, not too cold. Was it Goldilocks? And when mind, bound in a tangle, is relaxed, without doubt, it frees itself. In accordance with these statements, relax without becoming distracted. So when it says, when the mind is bound in a tangle, when mind, bound in a tangle, is relaxed, without doubt, it frees itself. So this is talking about if you put too much tension, it's like your mind is just in a knot, you can't get out of it, just let go a little bit. Relax, and then tighten up again. Just find that sweet spot. Make sense so far? Anna, are you following? Okay. When you look at the nature, this is again Alex's translation that you have a copy of. When you look at the nature of any thought that arises, it disappears by itself and an utter bareness dawns. foods. When you look at the nature of any thought that arises, it disappears. What is it referring to?
The thought itself, the content,
The nature or the thought?
the thought.
Yeah, it's okay. You understand that way. Okay, that's good. If that's what it doesn't seem like it implies it. When you look at the nature of any thought that arises, looks like nature is the subject of the
Yeah.
sentence. It disappears. It sounds like the nature disappears, but you're understanding how I think it should be understood. The thought disappears. So what does that mean? Remember we said even when the thought is there, think of the nature of that thought. The nature of that thought is the same nature as the mind itself, clear light, manifesting in this conventional appearance. Or another way of saying it is, look at the nature of the consciousness within which that thought is embedded. That's how I was saying before. In so doing, you're defocusing on the objective thought, refocusing on the content, the thought itself, on the nature of the thought. Sorry. Let go of your attention to the thought, the content. Refocus on the nature of the mind within which it's arising, and that thought will begin to disappear. I think that's what it's referring to. When you look at the nature of any thought that arises, it disappears. The thought disappears. The appearance disappears by itself, and an utter bareness dawns. So we're familiar with that. It's nice to have it written down. When you go home, you can look at this again and you can say, oh, it's not something different than we did in our meditation. It's the same thing, but it can, in different words, hearing it in different words and hearing it again sometimes brings some different clarity. When I taught Lama Ussel, the reincarnation of Lama Yeshe, when he was a little boy, I think he was, what was he, 6.5? No, maybe 8.5 till 12 or something, those years. I would teach him something in the books. It was say history or Aztecs or something. And at first he was sort of like, he'd look at me and I'm like, yeah, you say, I don't know if that's really right. And then I'd get another book. Peter provided us with lots of peripheral reading, these kids' books. They're big format with pictures of Aztecs and usually quite good, from England, other scholarly works. And we read another one and then it was like, oh, okay. It's like, after he heard it a couple times, he'd heard it, it's like, it's just me saying it, it wasn't enough. After, yeah, that's it. So here, this kind of, hopefully you'll be like that. He won't be saying, well, George said something completely different. Hopefully you'll understand this is what we've been talking about, right? Almost this root text is written in a way also that's a little bit opaque, not completely clear. Maybe because even though the Panchen Lama was making the teachings of Mahamudra available to the public, so to speak, still making it in a somewhat veiled way. You had to really think about it and receive some instruction about it, so as not to lose the sacredness of it. When you look at the nature of any thought that arises, it disappears by itself and an utter bareness dawns. Likewise, when you inspect, when settled, what does that mean? When settled means once you're settled in the clear light nature of the mind for an instant or so, or for a longer period of time. When you inspect, when settled, you inspect the state, you see a vivid, non-obstructive bareness and clarity. Non-obstructive, remember, it doesn't obstruct the coming and going of thoughts. Bareness, nothing there, and clarity. This is well known as, quote, the settled and moving minds mixed together. Let me read Vola's translation. As you look at the nature of whatever conceptual thoughts arise, look at the nature, so that means the clear light nature, they disappear on their own and vacuity dawns. This vacuity does not mean the vacuity we associate with emptiness, but just the vacuity of sky, or the vacuity of the mind. Similarly, if you investigate when the mind is still, or settled still, so it's not moving with thoughts, a non-obstructing and empty clarity is vivid. It is called seeing that stillness and movement are integrated. Thus, no matter what thoughts arise, when without blocking it, you recognize that it is a movement of the mind and have settled on its essential nature, you find it is like the example of the flight of a bird confined on a boat. As is said, just as the crow, having flown from a ship, after circling the directions, must re-alight on it, unquote. So what's this talking about? Whatever thoughts arise in your mind, you're trying to watch your aim is to see and have a continuity of the clarity of the mind, but thoughts will arise, inevitably. It's not like it's after a couple of days you have only clarity. Thoughts are going to be coming. When thoughts arise, without blocking that thought, you recognize that it is a movement of the mind, and having settled on its essential nature, the clarity behind it, you go back to the clarity of the mind. So you might find yourself following a thought for a while. Oh, that was good Afghani food at lunch. Oh yeah, Jeff and George were talking about their travels in Afghanistan, but I don't know, George's stories are ridiculous, and sometimes, you start, you know what I mean? One thought comes up, and by association another thought comes, and we're led like the buffalo by those thoughts without control. So, not to worry, even if you find yourself doing that, at any point along that trail, if you just focus on the nature of the mind that's knowing it, the clear light nature, or the function of the mind, you ask yourself, what is knowing this? Focus on the knowing nature of the mind that's knowing that thought. As though you arrive back at the clarity of the mind. It's not like you're stranded out there somewhere because the thought brought you somewhere away. So in ancient times, you know this? They would have birds on the ships. When they got to distant places, they didn't know, are they close to land or not? So what they would do then is they would open the cage and let some of the birds out. They would fly off. Where would the birds, they're not birds that are fishing in the ocean, so they're not interested in staying here. They're looking for some land to alight on, where they can hold up, be free of this ship. So if the birds don't come back, what would the captain think? Land ho. They don't see it, but they can infer there might be some land there. When your thoughts go off, and you keep on saying it, you keep on following them, if you don't come back to the clarity, that's bad. That's like the unlikely situation here of the birds going off and not coming back. But if the birds come back even after a couple hours, they've flown as far as they could without getting exhausted, and then they've flown back, you probably have a sense of the equilibrium of how much endurance they have to get back to the ship. You know that you're not near land, otherwise they wouldn't have come back. Does it make sense? So let me read this other translation of that, maybe it makes it more clear. Recognize as movement of the mind whatever conceptual thoughts are generated, and without blocking them, focus on their nature. You know, when we say movement of the mind, it means one moment of the mind you're focused on the object, and another moment the mind is moving, like the mental factor I said, intention, that moves the mind. This is similar to the example of the bird that flies from a boat. As it is said, quote, like the crow that flies off a boat. Or they're using a crow. Yeah, they said crow there also. And after circling around it, it lands on it again. Well, it doesn't say circling around it, probably circling around. It goes off, you don't necessarily see, because the bird is trying to see as it's up high, and it goes away from you for a while, try to see if it sees some land or some sign of land. If it comes back, the analogy here means that you come, eventually, even if you follow the thoughts for some time, or if you realize that they've been moving for some time, you're not focusing on them, eventually as you focus on their nature, they'll disappear and you'll alight back on the boat of the clarity of your mind, which you started from. So it's a useful way of thinking. Panchen Lama has integrated some aphorisms from these 7 core texts and the 3 core texts of the Mahasiddhas. That's when he's giving the quotations, he's quoting those texts. Make sense? Just as a crow having flown from a ship after circling the directions must re-alight on it, unquote, at the bottom of page 4. From cultivating such methods as these, this is parenthetical, from cultivating such, quote, parentheses, methods as these, you realize, end parentheses, since the essential nature of the totally absorbed mind is a lucidity and clarity unobstructed by anything, right? So you're letting go of the thoughts, even when they occur, you're not worrying, you just let them play out, focus again on the clarity of the mind within which is their essential nature. Since the essential nature of the totally absorbed mind, the mind is totally concentrated, not distracted, is a lucidity and clarity unobstructed by anything, and not established as any form of physical phenomenon. Any form of physical, shouldn't that be the plural? Physical phenomenon. It is like space, an utter bareness that allows anything to dawn and be vivid. Nevertheless, although the actual nature of mind may be seen straightforwardly, without exceptional perception, to be like that, it cannot be taken as this and be verbally indicated. Particularly clear what Alex's translation is saying here. So, as you're doing this again and again, like in the Heart Sutra it says, repeatedly and correctly. Remember when Avalokiteshvara is telling Shri Puja, repeatedly doing your meditation. I mentioned the other day in one of the texts, the 5 texts of Maitreya. We call them the 5 texts of Maitreya. The future Buddha Maitreya, who is now the regent in Tushita heaven. One of the great Buddhist saints, Asanga. Remember the story of Asanga? He actually had vision of Maitreya after 12 years of retreat, cursing Maitreya when he first saw him, saying, "Where were you all this time?" And Maitreya showed him his robe. He said, "This is your spittle. I was always in the corner of your cave. You had still obscurations. You couldn't see me." So Maitreya took him to Tushita heaven for, I think, a day and a night or something in Tushita, which was like 50 Earth years. And he passed on to a Sangha transmission of 5 texts. They call the 5 texts of Maitreya. In one of them, I think, I'm not sure if it's the Uttanamshe, the delineation of the middle and extremes, meaning what's the middle way? What's the correct view of emptiness beyond extremes? Same thing in tightening, right? You want to get to that sweet spot. It's not too tight, not too loose. So in understanding emptiness, you have to find the correct understanding of emptiness, not negating everything. Things still exist conventionally, not having something existing that's not really there either. You have to find the middle way. I think it was in that text, Maitreya said, meditation means familiarizing the mind with a wholesome state. Excuse me. So how do you familiarize with something? 2 main ways: repetition and concentration. Even you don't have yet good concentration, you can familiarize with something, your golf swing or your whatever, or your, the practice of meditation, by doing it again and again, having the patience to do that. And we know, if you do yoga or something else, you keep on doing it, even though you don't feel that competent, over some time you begin to be able to do the poses or the swing or whatever more naturally. But then the other way of familiarizing, let's say with a meditative object, is to not just to do it again and again, but at one time to completely focus the mind on that, leaving an imprint, like sticking your hand in the sand, pressing down, rather than just touching the sand and leaving it. You see your handprint there, but even the wind begins to cause to disappear, and the first time the tide comes in, it's completely gone. You leave a big handprint, it remains longer time. So that's concentration, leaves an imprint in the mind more indelibly than simply repeating it again and again, the practice again and again. There's 2 aspects. So if you can concentrate again and again, you get both. In Alex's terms, it's a wham bang, a double whammy. From cultivating such methods as these, you realize that since the essential nature of the totally absorbed mind is a lucidity and clarity unobstructed by anything, and not established as any form of physical phenomena, it is like space in that it is an utter bareness that allows anything to dawn and be vivid. Is it space, the nature of the mind? Why not?
Because it's clear light.
It's clear light. Why isn't it space? Space is the lack of obstructing contact. It's like space. Space is just also, but space, let's say, akasha, which is a lack of obstructing contact, the mere lack of obstructing contact, is a negative phenomena, right? Remember what we said? Like emptiness. It has to be first inferred before it can be perceived with the senses, with the mind. Whereas the clear light nature of the mind, is that a negative phenomena? Oh, interesting. Maybe it's an affirming negation, or you have to think, because it's the object of discussion and debate. Here, the way it's talking about it is, what does it say here? Like space, it is an utter bareness that allows anything to dawn and be vivid. But maybe that allows anything to dawn and be vivid is making it an affirming negation. So it's something that you can actually perceive, the clear light nature of the mind. Still hidden phenomena, but it takes some time. Nevertheless, although the actual nature of the mind may seem may be seen straightforwardly, let's see how she translates that, with exceptional perception, to be like that, it cannot be taken as a this and be verbally indicated. What is that saying? Having practiced in this way, the nature of any equipoise is a space of vacuity, since it is not obstructing, lucid, clear, and unobstructed by anything material. It is also vivid, since anything can appear within it. This reality of the mind is indeed perceived directly with insight, but it can't be indicated, grasped, or named as this or that. So this is a little bit like the experience of emptiness. When people, there's a praise to the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, meaning the praise of the Prajnaparamita. You know, Masam, what is it? Masam Jome Shera Parochin. Masam Jome, it means unimaginable with the mind. You can't understand it with the conceptual mind. Jome means inexpressible with words. How can you can talk about, if you have an insight into emptiness, someone says, what was it like? You say, well, it was kind of like this, but you can't express it as it was. You can't express emptiness. And it's unimaginable. You can't, meaning that it can't be understood conceptually as it actually is. You can have a conceptual understanding of emptiness, but that's not how it actually, when you can get rid of that final veil or mental image, that's not how the actual awareness actually is. Masam Jome Shera Parochin. Can't be indicated, grasped at, or named as this or that. Where are we? On page 5. The great meditators of the snow mountains. What does that mean? The great meditators of the snow mountains. Maybe better, land of snows. What's the land of snows?
Tibet.
Yeah, it's a nickname, it's a epithet for Tibet. Remember when the Mongolian fellow was here the other day? I faked his name, Hizbli or something like that. Very nice guy. I mentioned him that when I was in Mongolia, all of the ritual scarves, you know what these are called? What's it called? Kata, right? In Tibet, most common scarf is white like that. There are other colored ones, but that's the main one. In Mongolia, the main one was beautiful blue. And I asked him if he knew the reason. I think he had some reason, but usually it's when I was in Mongolia, they told me, oh, that's because Tibet is known as the land of the snow mountains. The land of snows. There's, the snow mountains. The two words are both there, mountain and snow. Mongolia is known as the land of the sky, the vast blue sky, the plains, the, what is it called, the steppes, just vast sky, blue. So the great meditators of the snow mountains means Tibet, the land of snows, the mountain, the land of the snow mountains. They are practically of a single opinion and proclaiming that this settling of the mind at ease, what we're doing, sort of this beginning of Mahamudra, you've recognized the clear light nature, then you've applied these aphorisms of the Mahasiddhas, like recognizing like the bird going off the ship, it will always come back to the clear light nature of the mind, all these things, relax, and you will loosen these various things. You end up with a concentration and absorption on this clarity and knowing. So he says, at this time, the great meditators of Tibet are practically of a single opinion. Most people say, they proclaim that this settling of the mind at ease, not cognitively taking as this anything that arises, so one doesn't grasp at anything that arises within the mind, just let it go. So again, focusing, or let it go if it disappears by itself, or even looking at it, recognizing the space behind it. There's nothing there. They say this is a guideline instruction for putting within your grasp the forging of Buddhahood. They say this is the essential, this is Mahamudra, this is the special method. You're on the doorstep of Buddhahood, as though you're about to realize emptiness or great realization. Be that as it may, I, Chukyi Gelsen, the first Panchen Lama, as yet it had not been, the appellation Panchen Lama had not been applied to his predecessor, so he would be called, at that point, he could be called the first Panchen Lama, but historically we call him the fourth Panchen Lama because the name was, remember, retroactively applied to the previous 3 reincarnations. Be that as it may, that's what they say. Oh, this is a credible guideline to realize, you're on the doorstep of Buddhahood. Be that as may, I, Chukyi Gelsen, on the other hand, say that this method is a wondrous, skillful means for beginners to accomplish the settling of their mind, and is a way for knowing face to face merely the superficial nature of the mind that conceals something deeper. Or in other words, this is a way for beginners to know barely, face to face, the conventional nature, superficial nature of the mind, not the ultimate nature, not its emptiness, but the conventional nature of the mind, that itself conceals something deeper. What's that? Conceals its ultimate nature. You're seeing the conventional nature of the mind. When we later meditate on the emptiness of that conventional nature of the mind, that's when you are realizing the emptiness of the mind. What is appearing is not the actual emptiness of the mind. This is just this conventional nature. Remember, I might have mentioned yesterday or earlier some of the Kargyu presentation of Mahamudra. Some of the lamas say, oh, you are realizing the emptiness of the mind when you have this clarity. Almost like what Chukyi Gelsen is saying here, Panchen Lama is saying, is a very popular opinion. Many meditators of Tibet say that this is almost like you're realizing emptiness, you're ready to achieve Buddhahood. And I say, baloney. Or some people would say something a little more heavy. This is not that yet. This is a way to approach that by realizing the conventional nature of the mind, the superficial nature of the mind, that in itself is inferring something deeper, the ultimate nature of the mind. In fact, this is what we said in our presentation in a nutshell the other day. By now having this concentration on the clear light nature of the mind, having identified it and kept the concentration, then it's almost like within a laboratory that's been cleaned. You have your technicians put all of the apparatus away from your table, clean it off. You can do experiment here now. Or you clean off the kitchen table, you take all the salt and pepper and soup it up. You can do your tax returns there. You can do your experiments there. So in this clear light nature of the mind, where all other conceptualizing thoughts are subdued, which has this nature of clarity and knowing, you then begin to investigate. The next stage, which will be coming, is to investigate the nature of the self, because it can appear very clearly now, unencumbered by other thoughts that distract you when you try to observe the object of negation. Remember that term, object of negation? Have you heard that before? Anna, have you heard that term before? Some of you are long-time students. Those who had not heard, what that means is when you, in emptiness, a meditation on selflessness or emptiness of the person, you're not negating completely a self, because the person still has a conventional existence, but you're not attending to that now. What you're doing is you recognizing how the self seems to appear to the mind as having some real findable existence. That appearance does exist, no doubt about it. But what the mind thinks, like the reflection in the mirror, the reflection exists. You're looking over there to see what I'm pointing?
I'm imagining.
Right. Like the reflection in the mirror. Felicity. Like the reflection in the mirror that you out of the corner of your eye, you think, oh, someone's wearing the same clothes as I am. And you turn and you see it's just a reflection. You can't say the reflection doesn't exist, but at that moment you realize it is devoid of what you thought it meant, that reflection, as though somehow there was something, another person there that was dressed like you. Right? You follow? Don't just say like obligation or courtesy. Say, yes, very clear. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let me read how Vola translates that. These days, most of the great meditators of the land of snows, I'm used to that, agree that placing the mind in a relaxed manner on whatever dawns, without grasping, is renowned as, quote, instructions kindling Buddhahood. Like, wow, this is almost like from the Gelugpa point of view, some of the criticism of some Kargyu presenters. They were saying, oh, this is like almost realization of emptiness. This is something kindling Buddhahood. I, Chukyi Gelsen, on the other hand, say that for beginners, this is an amazing, skillful method for establishing stillness of the mind, to develop shamatha, concentration, and a way to introduce the conventional mind. And I think that's more clear. Make sense? So this goes along with what we have been doing at meditation. Not anything different, but having seen it in other words, maybe sometimes other associations can be made in your mind, things may become clearer, hopefully. If they become less clear, go back to the experience that we had in meditation. Rely on that rather than the words look complicated. What does that mean? Then continuing on page 5, the third paragraph down. As for the methods that can lead you to know face to face the actual deepest nature of the mind, he says deepest here, sort of the ultimate nature of the mind. So what we've recognized now is what? The conventional nature of the mind. The conventional clear light nature of the mind. It has other conventional natures, right? What's another conventional nature that the mind has? Its impermanence, what are called general characteristics. And then its specific characteristic, its specific nature is this clarity. So we've trying to get familiar here and keep a concentration on the conventional clear light nature of the mind. Now, as for the methods that can lead you to know face-to-face the actual ultimate nature of the mind, or deepest nature of the mind, I shall now set out the guideline teachings of my root guru, Sangye Yeshe, who, as his name literally means, Sangye means Buddha in Tibetan, Yeshe means gnosis. or as Geshe Sopa used to say, not noses, gnosis. You know what gnosis means? What is it? It's Greek, right? Related with the word to know, Gnosis. It's considered to be, in terms of Buddhism, we can translate the word Sherab. You've heard, probably you know some monks named Sherab, or some nun named Sherab, or some person named Sherab. Sherab means wisdom, or prajna. Prajna paramita. Prajna means wisdom. And wisdom is of various kinds. Wisdom that can realize emptiness, also the perfection of wisdom. But there's a deeper kind of wisdom, experiential wisdom, than Sherab, that is called jnana, like Lama Yeshe, like Yeshe, the Tibetan word Yeshe. Lama Yeshe, sometimes he would write at the end of his text, composed by Muni Jnana. You know, Muni like Tupa, Tupten, short for Tupten, Jnana. So that deeper kind of wisdom, sometimes translated, sometimes people say exalted wisdom, better than praja, but maybe you could settle on gnosis. So wisdom and gnosis, a deeper kind of wisdom. So I shall now set out the guideline teachings of my root guru, Sangye Yeshe, who, as his name literally means, is the embodiment of Buddha's deep awareness. So he's kind of translating Yeshe as deep awareness. Assuming the guise of a monk, clad in saffron, he has eliminated the darkness enshrouding my mind. What does that mean? He was living out in the forest and he just had saffron flowers around him, so hiding his private parts or something? No, he's clad in saffron colored robes, right? You might say, have you heard this before? Would you say this is saffron colored? What is this color? Oh, this robe, the lower robe here.
Maroon.
We might say maroon. It's not purple, obviously. It's kind of maroonish. In Tibet, there was sometimes the native colors that they could have for the lower robes was a little bit maybe browner, like you see the Burmese monks. There are various shades of this. It's said that in Tibet, there were recognized 3 shades of saffron flowers, colors of saffron flowers. Have you seen, when you have saffron rice, have you ever had saffron rice? Like, let's say, this saffron that Venerable uses in the offering bowls, the flowers themselves look a little bit red, and it has a little reddish tinge to it, right? So it's said that this lower robe was meant to be that shade, and the 2 upper robes, I've only got one of the upper robes on, this is called the Dharma garment, the chugu. You have chugu, right? There's another one that the fully ordained have called the namjar, which we wear by monthly confession and the teachings and so forth, with smaller squares on it that indicate supposedly you've studied higher things. So these 2 upper robes are meant to be slightly different shades of saffron also. And the idea is that the Tibetan practice of Vinaya, of the monastic rules, came from 3 locations in India, Kashmir, Central, and I think Southeast, not sure exactly. And within those regions, the saffron that was prominent in, say, Kashmir was the reddish one. The one in Central was the sort of pale yellow, different than these. And then the one in maybe the Southeast was more like this shade. I'm not sure exactly where they were, but they ended. So when they say the 3 saffron robes, of a monk, you might not understand, or a nun, that you may not understand what that means. It means the lower robe, the sort of like the skirt, or shemdab, the lower garment, and one of the Dharma robes, and the other. It doesn't mean this garment that you often, like Venerable has over her shoulders now, that I wear when I'm walking back. This is actually kind of like something to absorb the perspiration. This is not considered one of the 3 blessed robes of a monk or not, or of a monk. So this is just called a sen. So of those 3 saffron-colored robes, so even this is meant to be a shade of saffron, even though we don't authentically have material easily obtainable that's kind of that darkish yellow, almost reddish. It's meant to be that. Make sense? Confused? So I shall now set out the guideline teachings of my root guru, Sangye Yeshe, who, as his name literally means, is the embodiment of the Buddha's deep awareness. Sangye, Buddha, deep awareness, Yeshe. Assuming the guise of a monk, clad in saffron, he has eliminated the darkness enshrouding my mind. Or as Vola translates, as for the way to introduce the reality of the mind, I will record the oral instructions of my root guru. He is the pristine wisdom of all the Buddhas. So she's embedded in this sentence, because he's not pointing out my guru named Sangye Yeshe. She's embedded Sangye and Yeshe into this sentence. He is the pristine wisdom of all the Buddhas, the Yeshe of all the Sangye, who assumed the aspect of a saffron-robed monk and removed the darkness of my confused mind. Okay. So this is the oral tradition that was passed down from Lama Tsongkhapa to his root guru, Sangye Yeshe. When in a state of total absorption as before, we were looking at the clear light nature of the mind, we've gotten to that stage where we have good concentration, and with a tiny portion of awareness, like a tiny fish flashing about in a lucid pond and not disturbing it, intelligently inspect the nature of the individual who is the meditator. Who is that individual? I won't ask Jeff, he's about to experience samadhi. Who is that individual? That means you. The sense of an observer, the meditator, the intelligently inspect the nature of the individual who is the meditator. What does that mean, intelligently inspect? Here it's talking about trying to develop, we've already got a lucid mind, not necessarily fully fledged shamatha, but maybe close. Remember shamatha? To develop, you know the word vipassana? Have you heard of vipassana? How's it translated, vipassana? Shamatha we translate as clear, or is it calm abiding or tranquil abiding? Shamatha?
Insight.
Insight, penetrative insight, because in Tibetan it's lak tong. Tong means seeing or insight. Lak means exceptional or discriminating. Vipassana. In Pali, I think there's vipassana. Actually, remember I was telling you about the difference between Sanskrit and Pali? They don't say karma, they say kama. They don't have if two consonants are together, they have to be the same consonant. So MM rather than RM. Karma. Dharma is dhamma in Pali. I sometimes joke that Pali is like John Kennedy, the former president, trying to speak Sanskrit. Pak the ka and the ha vidya. You don't hear the RD or the pak the ka and the ha vidya. It's a joke. Okay, don't try to figure it out. Okay, so within that state, we try to develop vipassana. So what that means is once you develop tranquil abiding, the next step is to learn, because in that state, tranquil abiding, first of all, you're holding just one thing and not allowing your mind to go into any conceptualization. No analysis, just holding, single-pointed. Now, if you try to analyze within that, like if you put a little fish, koi fish, in a pond that has been previously empty of fish, the sand, as the koi fish starts swimming around, or goldfish starts swimming around, at first, so excited, it causes ripples on the surface, the water, little waves you can see. Have you noticed that when you go to a pond and they think you're bringing some bread, and all of a sudden there's all these ripples because the fish are moving around near there? Do you know what I mean? Have you seen? And also, because of their motion, some of the sediment in the bottom is brought up. So that indicates two things. When you try to integrate some vipassana, some analysis within this calm mind, at first, because you're not yet skilled how to analyze, like that fish, you cause the calmness of the mind to be agitated a little, like the waves of the surface, which then in turn allow some of the afflictions to arise, some attachment and different conceptualizing minds like the sediment at the bottom come up. If you take out the fish, or if the fish just stands still for a while, again you go back into equipoise, the sediment sinks, and the ripples go away, and you're left in that calm mind, and you have to try again. So this time you begin to analyze more slowly. You have to learn how to analyze within that mind, like the skillful goldfish. Do you have goldfish, Jeff? You do? Are they skillful or not?
I said, I've not seen them for a while. I'm not sure they're still there.
When's the last time you fed?
Uh-oh.
When's the last time you fed them?
The pond hasn't been kept up for a year anyway.
Oh yeah, I think they may have gone.
I don't think you help them. They were.
I think they've gone into the bardo.
They didn't, there's no evidence that
year.
they died. The pond is self-serving to some extent.
Oh, maybe some insects. Maybe they can eat some things there.
No, there's all kinds of algae and stuff on the bottom.
Mm.
They're very shy now, that's for sure. Whether they're there or not, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Instead of coming to the shore when you come, they're going to go to the other side of the pool. Okay, so like that analogy here, it says, while in a state of total absorption as before, and with a tiny portion of awareness, because it's like the mind looking at the mind, like one part of the mind looking at the red mind, like a tiny fish flashing about in a lucid pond, not disturbing it, intelligently inspect the nature of the individual who is the meditator. So as having first reached this clear light nature of the mind, you don't immediately investigate the emptiness of the mind. You first try to establish the emptiness of the person. Because between the two, emptiness of persons and emptiness of phenomena other than persons, the first real taste of experience of emptiness comes from realizing the emptiness of the person through all of the different traditions. Even though you might be exposed to emptiness of phenomena first, or you think about it, it makes sense. First real insight into emptiness comes from experiencing the emptiness of the person, the selflessness of persons. Intelligently inspect, what he's using, means this vipassana is a mind which is conjoined with wisdom. Okay? Between concentration and wisdom, it is more aligned with wisdom, even though it's not a wisdom. At first it's analyzing, whether that self exists the way that it appears. And even then, when it settles on that, and again has a unified state of shamatha and vipassana, it's still called vipassana, even though it's not moving, because it is knowing this with certainty and with wisdom when you analyze the selflessness of the person. So like a tiny fish flashing about in a lucid pond and not disturbing it, intelligently, with wisdom, inspect the nature of the individual who is the meditator. As Vola translated. From within that very state of earlier equipoise, investigate intelligently, with subtle awareness, the essence of the individual who is meditating. just like a small fish that moves in lucid waters without causing any disturbance. Okay? Were you with me? So we're talking now, we've reached the point where it's a little bit beyond us now, but we can even try to emulate this, even though we don't have real shamatha. You can try to analyze this. So what we're going to try to do now is first recognize the object of negation, the sense of an inherently existent self. Once you recognize that within this clarity, which makes it easier, then to use logic to refute it. It is just as our actual protector for refuge, the highly realized Arya Nagarjuna has said. So this actual protector for refuge is actually this is a Tibetan title, maybe in Sanskrit also, Kyepgon. We all, nowadays, one of the epithets for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's name was a Kyepgon. Do you say Kyepgon? Or what's the other one? Kyepje, almost the same thing. Kyepgon means refuge, protector. Kyep means refuge. Kyepje means venerable, exalted protector, protector. Or Kyep means refuge. So it doesn't mean that he's the only refuge. Nagarjuna is just like a title. Highly realized Arya Nagarjuna has said, an individual is not earth, means not the earth element, because our body is comprised of the four classic elements. What are the four classic elements? Earth.
Wind, fire, water,
Yeah, earth,
and space.
water, fire, air, wind. Like even the Romans and the Greeks talked about the four elements, right? Some people think, oh, Buddhism is so backward like these ancient people. But it's talking about something very sophisticated. It's not talking about there's only these four elements. It means earth refers to the solidity, the solid aspects of the aggregates, which would mean the form aggregate. Water refers to what? The cohesive nature of things. Like water, if you put two drops of water next to each other, they kind of merge together. Not fire, that refers to like the tumo or the heat within our body. Nor wind. It's not the prana and so forth. You can't find any of those things are not the person. It's not space of the body. Here it doesn't mean general space. It means within your body there's the space of the stomach. Maybe not now, you just had lunch. There's less space in the stomach. There's space within your body. Nor consciousness. Sometimes you might be thinking, it's not the body, not these elements, but it's the consciousness. That must be the self. It's not the consciousness either. You can't find the self within the consciousness. Nor is he or she, or in other words, nor are they, all of them, all together. Yet what individual is there separate from these? How many elements did we talk about? There are four elements, and then space and consciousness, so six. Sometimes we say the six elements. Usually what you think of analysis, here he's just giving a variation of it, we say the person is not any of the five aggregates. It's not the form aggregate, the feeling aggregate. It's another way of analyzing, like dividing the pizza in different ways. You can divide the person into six consciousnesses upon those, six elements upon which the person can be designated, but none of those elements, just as none of the skandhas, the aggregates, are the person. It's not the whole combination of them as the person. It's just the person is designated to that collection. The mere name, Varahi, given to this collection of contaminated aggregates. Sorry, don't mean to be. Didn't mean. In some of our cases, they're more contaminated than it. Nor is he or she all of them. What individual is there separate from these? So the self is not it's not findable anywhere of any of these, and not the combination, yet the self is not different, separate from these, as though a separate entity. Remember when we talked about conventional truth and ultimate truth? Form is empty, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. So it's not as though there is a self which is something of a different entity than the aggregates, which we might sometimes think, looking at the aggregates, the self, the owner of the aggregates. That's also not the case. And just as an individual is not perfectly existent because he or she is what can be labeled, designated, imputed on a conglomeration of the six constituents. Here he's calling these six elements six constituents. Likewise, none of the constituents are perfectly existent, truly existent, because each is what can be labeled on a accumulation of parts. Here's this conglomeration of parts. He's quoting a verse from Nagarjuna, where the quote begins, "And an individual is not the earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, nor is he or she, nor are they, all of them, yet what individual is there separate from these? And just as an individual is not truly existent because they are a association, a conglomeration of the six constituents. Likewise, none of the constituents are truly existent because each is a conglomeration of its parts." Unquote. So that's a quotation from Nagarjuna. So as Vola translates, and she's quoting here, she's found the quotation from the Ratnavali. You know the Ratnavali? Have you heard of Nagarjuna? Precious Garland, maybe you've heard that name. The Precious Garland of Nagarjuna says, verses 180 and 181, in case you have a copy of that. "The individual is not earth, is not water, is not fire, is not wind, is not space, is not awareness, is not all of these. Yet, what individual is there other than these? Just as the individual is not real, because it is composed of the six elements, likewise the elements themselves are not real, because they themselves are composites." Remember we said, Avalokiteshvara said, meditate on the emptiness of the five aggregates also. So not just, one might think the five aggregates are really there, or the six elements or constituents are really there, and the person is designated onto them, imputed on them. But come on, the elements exist. The basis of imputing, like the trees exist, the forest may be just an intellectual construct that depends on seeing the trees, but come on, the trees are there. Here, if you analyze the trees have parts also, composite parts. The name tree, the tree is just a name given to that collection of parts. Just like the body is also empty of inherent existence. It's just imputed onto the arms, legs, so forth. Following so far? "When you search, and, like that, cannot find even a mere atom of a total absorption, someone totally absorbed, and so on, then cultivate absorbed concentration on space-like voidness, single-pointedly without any wavering." What does that mean? When you search like that, when you've identified the object of negation, it hasn't gone much into identifying the object of negation other than saying, with a portion of awareness, like a tiny fish flashing about in a lucid pond and not disturbing it, intelligently inspect the self-nature of the individual who is the meditator. That one sentence actually might take you months and months. It means to identify the way that the self is appearing. That's called the object of negation. it's not that the appearance is to be negated immediately. It is eventually an object of negation in that when you're in absorption, it doesn't appear at all. That's not the problem. It's not that the self is, appearance of the self is the problem. It's the belief in that self. Like, you know, the appearance of the reflection of yourself in the mirror is not the problem. It's your belief that that might be a real person over there. That's the problem, right? The grasping to that. So when you search like that and cannot find even a mere atom of total absorption, so this is talking about, remember we talk in our dedication, we talk about the emptiness of the three spheres? Not the three spears, the three spheres, right? I like to keep that tradition. Geshe-Sobo is even though none of you will mistake my language, I think, for spears. If I say spheres, it might be, but just out of memory of laughing moments with Geshe-La, I like to say those things. So when I talked about the emptiness of the three spheres, do you remember what those three spheres were?
The giver is empty, the gift is empty, and the receiver is the person receiving
Something like
it.
that. That was when we were applying it to the six perfections. But yeah, when I said the emptiness of the three spheres, when we do dedication, similar. You could say in generosity, that's a good example. Say, there is no person that you thought was giving. You know, it's like, I gave that, man, I'm a good guy, I'm a good girl. Actually, that self doesn't exist at all. The recipient of the gift or generosity, the beggar or the person in need or whatever, or the person whose birthday it is, whatever the recipient, they don't exist the way that we have conceived of them since beginningless time, or persons from beginningless time. They are empty of inherent existence. And the act of giving, you know, as though you know, where do you see that? When the hand starts to go out, or is it here, is here? You can't find it anywhere within the parts. You can't find it in all the sum of the parts. It's not different than the parts. It's also just a process. It's just labeled onto those moments. Same thing with dedication. We said meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres when you dedicate. The merits I've created, I might think, you know, when you identify them in your mind, might, just like seeing the clear light nature of the mind, might appear like really there. They themselves also, although they appear to the mind afflicted by ignorance, they don't ultimately exist. There's nothing there, they're empty. The goals dedicated to enlightenment, a continual spiritual progress up to and including enlightenment for the welfare of others, all of that, you can conceptually get an idea of that. It seems like something solid and real. Maybe, yeah, Buddha really exists. Even the Buddha doesn't inherently exist. You might think, well, if he doesn't inherently exist, why am I, you know, functions, works, conventionally existent to the deluded mind, but is empty of inherent existence. And the act of dedicating, trying to join these merits with aspiration that they ripen in these ways, like the giving, it's a process. You can't find it anywhere in the parts. It's not the sum of the parts. It's not different than the parts. Just like this analysis of the person. So here he's alluding to that, I think. When you search and cannot find even a mere atom of total absorption, someone totally absorbed, what would be the third thing where he says, and so on? You're meditating on the... Then cultivate absorbed concentration on space-like voidness, single-pointedly without any wandering. So you're looking at the meditator, the state of meditation, and the object meditated upon, perhaps. Let's see how Vola translates that sentence here. Where are we? Page 127, right? when having investigated according to his statement, Nagarjuna's statement, you find not even an atom of the equipoise, and the practitioner who enters equipoise, there's probably a etc. there, la sopa in Tibetan, sustain a space-like equipoise single-pointedly and without distractions. So remember when we said the Mahamudra in a nutshell, I said first you recognize the clear light nature of the mind, takes a long time, repeatedly, correctly trying to find it. Then on the basis of that to develop single-pointed concentration, shamatha, as much as you can. Then to leave that and recognize the object of negation, the self, and use logic to refute that. The logic of emptiness that shows the self is empty of inherent existence. And concentrate on that single-pointedly. You realize emptiness now. The fact that it's the selflessness of the emptiness of the person doesn't matter. You can meditate on the emptiness of the Coca-Cola bottle or the thermos or the trees or the house or coming and going or emptiness, many kinds of emptiness. But once you've realized emptiness is one thing correctly, that you understand it's the lack of inherent existence, it's very easy to apply that same logic to everything else. Very simple. Okay?
Even the three spears?
Even the three spears. Even the three spears or spheres are also empty of inherent existence. So on page 6 of Alex's translation, furthermore, while in a state of total absorption, so we've meditated on the emptiness of the person, right? Maybe you're no longer in that absorption on the emptiness of the person, but you still have a clear concentration on the clear light nature of the mind. Scrutinize your mind. What does that mean? Now take the analysis away from, before you were analyzing the self, right? How the individual, your own self-identity, you try to recognize it and realize its emptiness, refute it. Now turn your attention rather than to the self, because that's already you have a feeling, an insight that doesn't exist. It's almost like when we were meditating, I said, see that there's a sense of the body and let go of that. Even for some time afterwards, you may not pay attention to your body very much. So here, now you have an insight into the emptiness of the self. As a result of that, the self is not, even the self might pop up a little bit. Already you have a memory, it's just an illusion. You're not, it's like seeing Santa Claus as an adult and knowing that's not really a real Santa Claus, it's Uncle Charlie or something. There's apple pie there, Felicity. Is that what, oh, you're getting that? Okay, that's from Anna's leftover from yesterday. So now you turn your state, your attention, and analyze or scrutinize the mental consciousness, the clear light nature of your mind. Okay, so there's two things here in mind, right? The clarity of the mind, that's the clear light nature, and what's the other thing in mind? Impermanent? You've got apple pie in your mouth. What is it?
What was the question?
What is the nature of apple pie?
That's the nature of apple pie. If you're concentrating, remember our goal at first was to mainly concentrate on the clear light nature of the mind. Indirectly, you knew that the mind also has the nature of knowing because you are knowing that. Okay, so mind is that which is clear, its clear light nature, and knowing. Its nature and its function. Clarity and knowing. So now it says, furthermore, while in a state of total absorption, scrutinize your mind. So what does it mean? Mind has these two factors. What are you going to be scrutinizing? The clarity or the knowing or both? Not established, keep reading, not established as any form of physical phenomena, he says phenomenon, any form, is it grammatically correct? Any form of physical phenomenon. Phenomenon is singular, phenomena is plural, right? Anyway, that's not important. Not established as any form of physical phenomena. It is a non-obstructive, utter bareness that gives rise to the cognitive dawning and projection of a wide variety of things. A continuum of unhindered, unceasing clarity and awareness. So it's both, it's talking about. So now before we were mainly focusing on the clear light nature, and indirectly because we were knowing that, we indirectly knew that the nature of the mind was also knowing, clear and knowing. Now we're looking at the mind as being that which is clear and knowing, a continuum of unhindered, unceasing clarity and awareness, engaging with objects without discontinuity. It appears not to depend on anything else. So here's the crux now. We realize just before this, maybe in the months or weeks or even could be years before this, we realized the emptiness of the person. Now we start to turn our attention to the mind and recognize how it has a certain way of appearing, the same way that the self appeared. Something appeared, and not only, you can't say the appearance doesn't exist, but what we thought the appearance indicated, like the reflection in the mirror. You have to look over there again for this. Like the reflection in the mirror, we thought there was something as though behind that reflection that was really there. And we realized it's actually empty of my worry, my projection. Did I tell you the example of the echo? I told you at lunch, but I don't think, didn't say. So at Deer Park, where I lived for some years before coming down here, late at night, I hadn't finished my prayers, my mantras, so I go out on the road on Schneider Drive. We're out in the countryside, but there was some car, maybe once every 20 minutes there'd be a car coming by, or 15 minutes or something. Across the road from the monastery, there was a farm, but the farmer and his wife, they'd go in the city, they had a residential, and it was often empty, and there was a dog. Jeff, you remember Sasha at Koban, the dog Sasha? It's so barking at so many of the Nepalis, they cut the tendons in her back legs.
Oh,
So she had to drag herself around. There was a dog like
Yeah.
that, had been run over, the back legs had been run over by a car. You know how dogs chase the cars? So she still, the imprint in the mind, always barking when I would come out, and even get out on the road, dragging her rear legs, trying to scare me away. She was just kind of like the watchdog. She was a little thing. So she would bark, and I would hear another dog bark over there. I'm not sure which order. And then another one over there, let's say. It looked like a couple blocks away, it sounded like. And then she would bark, and then bark, bark. They would never keep on barking. It was what I thought was suspicious. Usually when there's other dogs, they agitate them, and there'd be nothing until she barked again, and then finally it dawned on me, there's no dog over there. That's an echo. It's empty of dog. Incredible feeling. In the Buddha's teachings, he gave many examples to be used to understand emptiness. There are different categories, 11, 13, different things like, it's like a reflection in a mirror. It's like the appearance of the moon in a clear pond. It's like an echo. It's like like an illusion.
A star.
Yeah, well, that's something that's not emptiness. Like a cairn. You know what a cairn is? Am I pronouncing it right? Cairn? Like pile of stones.
Like a stupa.
Oh, yeah.
That demarcates your property. In England, in the Lake District, when we were in Manjusha, when you go out in the countryside, I can't remember what they call it, walking, in the countryside, you would see cairns in the distance, you're not quite sure. that a man, or is that something, a wave? As you get closer, and from the distance it looks like it might be a man, your mind is projecting man there, or maybe you're worried someone else is out here too, maybe they got a gun. You get closer, it's empty of man. I remember when I did retreat in Mexico on some very wealthy person's property, I would go walking sometime, and when I was going down this long stretch, at the end I thought, oh, looks like two dogs down there, maybe I better not go. And there's a lot of wild animals around here, and I wait, they didn't move, so I go around. As I got closer, I realized it was a piece of wood in the ground that was holding the water pipe where they would use for the garden out there. It was empty of, like a cairn, empty. So, like a reflection, like an echo, you might think, how does that work? When you have an experience like that, when you really thought there was really someone who was the cause, like the dog, there was a dog out there that was causing the sound that was coming in. This dog was barking, and bark, bark, as though there were really dogs out there. It was absolutely empty of dog. This is not as though there was anything else, not as though that understanding understood there was anything else out there. It just understood there was no dog. Mere vacuity. Do you follow? That sense? That was very, very moving to me. Maybe you've already had some experiences like that as you study these things. Furthermore, while in a state of total absorption, scrutinize your mind. Not established as any form of physical phenomena, it is a non-obstructive, utter bareness that gives rise to the cognitive dawning and projection of a wide variety of things. This is just conventional nature. A continuum of unhindered, unceasing clarity and awareness, engaging with objects without discontinuity. It appears not to depend on anything else, just as the self did not appear to depend on anything else. But as for the conceptually implied object of the mind that grasps for it to exist as it appears, our guardian Shantideva, guardian is just again like an epithet, a title, Shantideva, the great Shantideva, has said, what is called a continuum and a group, such as a rosary, an army, and the like, are falsities. They're falsely existent as findable wholes. Unquote. By means of scriptural authority and lines of reasoning such as these, totally absorb on the lack of existence established as things appear. So what is that talking about? Remember we were talking about the other class I gave mainly the example of forest and the trees. Forest from the Sautrantika point of view, one of the Buddhist schools, is just an imputedly existent phenomena. It doesn't substantially exist. But the tree, the individual tree substantially exists. Like they would say, the aggregates substantially exist, but the person is imputedly exists, designated to them. Right? But there are other examples, like the rosary. A rosary, if you look at the whole, you think, my rosary, I lost my rosary. It's like there's something there, the one thing that's a rosary. Rosary is just a name imputed on the parts, the beads and the string arranged in that way. What's the other example? Army. Group of soldiers. You say, I saw the army. Does the army exist substantially? No, it's just imputedly existent on a collection of parts, the soldiers, and maybe the artillery and the horses or whatever other things that constitute the army. So as Mola translates, he starts with, furthermore, she says, moreover, from within the state of equipoise, you're concentrated now, various objects appear and proliferate in the non-obstructing vacuity that is not established as material form. What does that mean? Within the mind. The mind is formless. It can't be created from form. It's not obstructed by form. Recognize this non-obstructing continuum, the mind that engages continuously, as clear in knowing. Recognize that mind as we've done before. Again, now you're revivifying that in mind. This is clear in knowing. The conceiving mind, which appears not to rely on anything else. And as for the objects it apprehends, Protector Shantideva has stated in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, you can find this in the 8th chapter, what is called a continuum or collection is false. It's a falsity as opposed to being something that's true. Why is that? It appears like a continuum is, you say, yeah, the stream. You think a continuum is kind of a stream is kind of an example of a continuum, right? There's a place in Indonesia where Atisha, when he was studying with Dharma Rakshita, with those, what was it, 13 years to understand all the extensive teachings on bodhicitta, where he would come to meditate on impermanence. He'd go by a stream. People still have an idea which stream it was. Have you ever been there, Anna? No. I have wished to visit next time I go to Singapore. I want to visit there. So he would meditate because the stream looks like a continuum, but every moment it's changing. And the famous Greek, I can't remember the name of the Greek person, who said, I can't paraphrase what he said, the stream that you stuck your foot in, no longer there, or something like that, You know what I'm saying? A continuum is not a whole. It's just a name we give to those changing parts. So what is called a continuum or a collection of aggregates, is false. It doesn't exist as a single unified thing is existing there. It's just a name that we give to that collection of parts. In the same way as are a mala, rosary, an army, and so on. Relying on scripture and logic, enter single-pointed equipoise in the state where things do not exist in the way they appear. Oh. Blissful. Relying on scripture and logic. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche would mention this many times. In the early years, when Rinpoche was taking the aspect of still meditating on emptiness, and I hadn't quite realized deeply, was still investigating, took the aspect, maybe great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for our sake, they look like they're learning like us, and every time you hear the Dalai Lama, it's almost like he's studied some more things since the last time, and he has some deeper insights to the teachings that you received from him before. Have any of you ever experienced that? Very, very, very special. So Rinpoche would say he'd heard from his teachers, as you read in the scriptures, that to really understand it, to get this experience of emptiness, here it's talking about the emptiness of the mind, you have to rely on scripture and logic. So you use logic to refute the existence. It's not the earth, water, fire, air, consciousness, space, so forth, and all these different things, other kinds of logical reasonings. But you have to use, very, very useful to rely upon the words of great realized beings who have realized this, the scriptural citations, like Shantideva's quotation, all these quotations that we got from the texts of the Mahasiddhas. So cherish that, those various scriptural citations, those quotations from the scriptures. So almost finished. By means of scriptural authority and lines of reasoning, this is just Alex's way of reading that, Totally absorb on the lack of existence established as things appear, and meditate on the emptiness of the clear light nature of the mind, or of the mind itself. Wow. And as I mentioned before, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, if you were to have an understanding, an insight into the emptiness of the mind, from that point you can make especially quick progress. Because everything that we experience, all outer objects, processes, worries, emotions, all are the objects of the mind. If the mind itself is empty of inherent existence, like a rainbow, like a reflection, all of its objects are likewise that way. So you know, just that realization allows you incredible flexibility. In short, page 6 at the bottom, as has been said from the precious lips of my spiritual mentor, Sangye Yeshe, omniscient in the true sense, is quoting Sangye Yeshe, quote, no matter what has cognitively dawned, you are fully aware of it as having existence established merely by its being. What can be cognitively held by a conceptual thought? The deepest sphere of reality is dawning without need to rely on anything else. Once you see that, you don't have to. It's like when I said, when you've used, the fish has analyzed now, then it can remain still. The fish of Vipassana is still called Vipassana. It doesn't have to be moving and analyzing. At that point, the Vipassana is acting as this wisdom. There's no need to rely on anything else. To immerse your awareness in the state of this dawning and totally absorb single-pointedly, oh my goodness, quote unquote, single-pointedly in this. Similarly, the hallowed fatherly Padampa Sangye. Have you heard of Padampa Sangye? Great Tibetan. Where was he from? Venerable, do you know? Tingri. He would, many of the verses are, oh people of Tingri. There was some village or little township. Many of the famous aphorisms of Padampa Sangye. He was one of the great beings who took the aspect of being very simple, but had the highest, realizations and teachings. So similarly, the hallowed fatherly Padampa Sangye has said, within a state of voidness, the lance spear of awareness is to be twirled around. A correct view of reality is not a tangible obstruction. O people of Dingri. Oh, here, because it says, here's, O people of Dingri. All such statements come to the same intended point. As Bola translates that. In brief, my spiritual teacher Sangye Yeshe, who understood everything in accordance with reality, said, when you fully understand whatever dawns in your mind is apprehended conceptually, the sphere of ultimate reality will dawn without your needing to rely on anything else. Once you place your mind in the knowledge of that dawning, dwell on it in single-pointed equipoise. How amazing. Unquote. Similar to this statement, Padampa Sangye also stated, people of Dingri, make the lance of awareness twirl within the empty state. The view is unimpeded and unobstructed. These instructions converge in the same point. Okay, leave some imprint. Hopefully, some of us will have a chance to continue to do Mahamudra meditation continually and correctly, right? Repeatedly. Don't give up. Then finally, at conclusion of your meditation, dedicate whatever ennobling positive forces accrued from meditating on Mahamudra, the great seal of reality, as well as your ocean-like network of constructive actions of the 3 times. So what does that mean? You dedicate the merits of your meditation, but all the merits you created in the past, the present, and even the merits you're going to generate in the future. How can you dedicate the future merits? They're not created yet. Well, just in the same way you go to the bank and you say, my future wages, every week you're going to take out. You can dedicate your future merits also. You can dedicate the merits of other people, even though it won't reckon on you, but you rejoice in their merits, you create merits. So dedicate not just the merits from your meditation on Mahamudra, but all the merits you've created in the past, as well as your ocean-like network of constructive actions of the 3 times toward great peerless enlightenment. You dedicate them to the achievement of enlightenment, but not, remember, always conjoined with bodhicitta, for the welfare of others. That's the reason. Just wishing for enlightenment or dedicating for enlightenment is not bodhicitta. It's only part of the definition of bodhicitta. It's motivated out of compassion for living beings. Having accustomed yourself like this, then no matter what has dawned as an appearance of a cognitive object to your 6-fold network of consciousness, what does that mean? 6-fold consciousness network. That means the 6 consciousnesses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, taste, tactile, and mental. Whatever objects appear, dawn to those. Inspect minutely its manner of appearance. Its manner of existence will dawn, denuded and distinctly. What's its manner of existence? Emptiness. We said at the beginning, I mentioned, when we were talking about what's true and what's false, definition of a truth is that which exists the way that it appears. Conventional phenomena are not truths. They don't exist the way they appear. They appear to be inherently existent, but they're not. So they're called truths for an idiot, and truths for a jerk, truths for a ignorant mind. Tibetan says kunsok demba, truth for a mind that grasps to this falsity. Its manner of existence will dawn, that's the emptiness, denuded and distinctly. This is the essential point for having whatever has cognitively dawned being like what you recognize. In short, any object whatsoever that cognitively appears, such as your own mind and so on, make yourself certain about its manner of existence. Don't grasp at it to exist in the manner that it appears, and always sustain that certainty. When you know one thing to exist like this, you see that it applies uniformly to the self-nature of all phenomena of samsara and nirvana. Aryadeva, who I mentioned before, the disciple of Nagarjuna, has also given voice to that in saying, any seer of one phenomenon, that's correct, is the seer of everything. Any voidness of one thing is the voidness of everything. So Vola said, afterwards dedicate whatever positive roots of virtue were created from having meditated on Mahamudra, along with the ocean of your virtue collected in the past, present, and future toward unsurpassable great enlightenment. Having cultivated your mind in this way, in the post-meditation, when you get up, whenever you investigate in great detail the way that any object of the 6 consciousnesses appear, the way it exists will dawn nakedly and vividly. So, having familiarized yourself with the Mahamudra, whatever you look at, when you think about it, it's arising within the clarity of my consciousness. You can let go of that and you will have an experience, a remembering consciousness of the emptiness of that. Recognize whatever arises in your mind. Recognize whatever arises in your mind. Sounds like that, I'm sure. In brief, do not grasp at the inherent existence of whatever object appears. What does that mean to grasp? Like if you have a little bit of taste of the selflessness of persons in your meditation, you're so convinced in that meditative effort, when you arise from that, again, the self seems to be there so clearly, and you have almost like you chuckle, say, whoa, what is this? amazing, you know. But you know it doesn't exist that way. It's called the illusion-like meditation on emptiness, right? Because you have a remembering consciousness of the emptiness of this, some continuity of that. Of course, if you don't keep on meditating, you lose that certainty that this is empty, and you begin to grasp again that these things are inherently existent. In brief, do not grasp at the inherent existence of whatever objects appear, such as your mind and so on, and always sustain with certainty the way they exist. So the counterposing here, appearance and existence. What appears to the ordinary mind is inherent existence, seems to be imbued with inherent existence, all the conventional phenomena. The way they really exist is empty of inherent existence. With such understanding, all phenomena in samsara and nirvana are united in a single essence. Aryadeva confirms this by explaining in that 400 stanzas, the 8th chapter. Remember the text I said, if you get a chance, I think the 2nd or 3rd chapter is the root source for changeable suffering. It was a great treatise. So in that text, in the 8th chapter, Aryadeva says, as we read the other translation, whoever sees one entity sees all entities. Whatever is the emptiness of one is the emptiness of all. Before the face, back in page 8, before the face of proper total absorption on the actual nature of everything, like that, the face, that means just in that perspective, the total absorption of the actual nature of everything, in the perspective of that of absorption, there is just the severance of mentally fabricated extremes regarding everything of samsara and nirvana. There's nothing else appearing. You know, in emptiness, there's no eye, no ears, no nose, there's no form, no sound, all the fabricated extremes, you know, that your mind thinks up, all are gone. There's no thought processes. There's no severance of mentally fabricated extremes regarding everything of samsara and nirvana, such as inherent findable existence and total non-existence, and so on. Yet, after you have arisen from that meditative equipoise, that means you come out of that, like I said, if you meditate on selflessness of a person, when he arises, if you've had a very good experience, it's almost like you almost chuckle to yourself. It's still the I seems to be appearing. Here it says, yet after you have arisen from that meditative equipoise and the emptiness of all phenomena, when you inspect, you see that the dependent arising of the functioning of what is merely imputedly existent, simply by names, undeniably and naturally still cognitively dawns, like dreams, mirages, reflections of the moon and water, and illusions. These are some of the other examples. When you realize simultaneously that appearances do not obscure voidness, and voidness does not make appearances cease, you are manifesting at that time the excellent pathway mind that cognizes from the single viewpoint of voidness and dependent arising being synonymous. So Vola translates that. The mind that properly placed in equipoise on reality is indeed completely free from the elaborations with respect to samsara and nirvana, such as existence and non-existence and so on. Once you've risen from that equipoise, when you investigate, you see that although agents, actions, and dependent originations exist merely through being imputed with a name, they still undeniably appear. So understanding emptiness doesn't mean these things don't exist at all, but you understand they exist just as imputations, like a dream, a visual distortion, a moon's reflection on the water in a mirage. When for you, appearances do not obscure emptiness, that means seeing appearances doesn't degenerate your understanding of emptiness, it even affirms it. And emptiness does not obscure appearances. When you realize emptiness, have an understanding of it, it doesn't degenerate the fact that things conventionally appear. The noble path of emptiness, independent origination, having the same meaning, will manifest. Wow. I think we're very fortunate to hear this. Then the colophon, you know what a colophon is? Well, it actually begins up here. The speaker of these words is the renunciate Losang Trygve Gelsen, who has listened to much teaching. Usually when Lama Tsongkhapa, or even the Dalai Lama, writes a text, he just says that in this, the Shakya Bhikshu, means the Bhikshu of Shakyamuni Buddha's tradition, Tenzin Gyatso, who has heard many teachings. So it's not like tooting your horn, like I've got great realizations. Just say, well read, or sometimes we say, I've heard many teachings. So here he's just in that same tradition, who's listened to many teachings. By its positive force, may all wandering beings quickly become triumphant Buddhas through this pathway of mind, apart from which there is no second gateway to a state of serenity. And then the author's secondary colophon, I have compiled these methods that lead you to know face to face the great seal of reality, the Mahamudra. At the repeated previous requests of Gendon Gyaltsen, who's one of his apparently disciples, who holds the monastic degree of infinitely learned scholar of the 10 fields of knowledge. There are different kinds of titles. Besides Geshe, there were, the well-versed in the 10 sciences and so forth. And of Shirabi Senge, who also requested, from Hatong, who holds the monastic degree of master of the 10 difficult texts. At that time, they were not everyone was given the title Geshe, as in the Gelugpa tradition nowadays. Even in the Kagyu and Nyingma traditions, they have similar titles when you're very learned. They have seen, these disciples who requested me to write this, they have seen that the 8 transitory things in this world, what are those? The 8 worldly dharmas, right?
Concerns,
What is that?
attachment to reputation.
Well, the 8 worldly dharmas, you're attached to the 8 worldly dharmas, so you don't have to put the word attached there. The 8 worldly dharmas are what? Pleasure, pain, where you're attached to pain, and the desire to be free from suffering. Possessions, lack of possessions, loss of possessions, fame and blame, and sweet ego-pleasing words, which we would call love, or let's say, and discordant words. They have seen that the 8 transitory things in this world are like dramas of madness. Oh, so touching. Like dramas of madness, and now live in remote solitude, these 2 people, following a sagely way of life and taking this pathway of mind as their essential practice. They were meditators who were meditating on the Mahamudra. They asked Panchen Lama to write this text. Further, many other disciples who wish to practice Mahamudra at its definitive level have also requested me. Once in Dharamsala, in McLeodganj, we were coming back from some teaching, and the Rinpoche was in the road near the Naraji's bus stand. Remember Jeff Naraji's store? Were you in Dharamsala? You must have been in Dharamsala.
I've been in Dharamsala, I don't remember the store.
Naraji, near the bus station. So Rinpoche was standing there, and I was like, Rinpoche, what are you doing? He was just standing there, like, spaced out. And then Rinpoche said, just watching samsara. So it was like, what does it say here? Like, we've seen the 8 transitory things in the world, like dramas of madness. Just watching the hustle and bustle of people arguing and attachment, someone, dog chasing, walking after someone and hoping they'll drop a morsel of food, or, Moreover, I have especially composed this text now since the great triumphant Ansapa, who was one of the lineage lamas, the omniscient, majestic commander of the ennobling ones with actual attainment, has said in one of his songs of experience to instruct himself and others, quote, I have compiled the instructions concerning Lamrim from the Kadam tradition, the followers of Atisha, all the way up from entrusting yourself to a spiritual teacher up through Shamatha and Vipassana. But in the end, I've been unable to set out now, in written words, the ultimate guidelines for Mahamudra. So, the Panchen Lama, the first Panchen Lama, or the fourth, depending on how you count, is the first one who wrote them down. He's telling one of the previous lineage lamas had said this. It wasn't the right time. He had not set out now in written words the ultimate guidelines for instructions for Mahamudra, which are not included among these aforementioned pathways of mind, which are not well known at present to those in the land of snows, unquote. Thus, what was not set down in writing at that time, due to the power of its being restricted, was intended for a later period, meaning the time that he wrote down this text. As, for example, the Lotus Sutra, in the Lotus Sutra it was stated, because it is to be realized completely by the Buddhas, by the Buddha's deep awareness, you could never say to those who would prematurely write about this method of their own accord that you are enlightened. If you ask why, it is because those who are guardians for safe direction have regard for the times. It means those who are the objects of our refuge realize that their correct time to explain something, and not like when your child is 4 years old and they ask where babies come from, it's not the right time to tell them about all the details of you might tell someone when they're 18, right? We have to have the talk. I heard this people say, right? So like that, spiritual things have to be explained at the right time. Therefore, also in order for such prophecies as this to be fulfilled, I, the renunciate Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen, who have not let degenerate the lineage of inspiration from those who have practiced straightforwardly this pathway of mine, from the peerless universal teacher, the king of the Shakyas, down through my root guru, the omniscient Sangha Yeshe, and who, myself, have become a member of this lineage, not letting the close bond of its practice be lost, and who uphold the quintessential teachings of the sutras and tantras, have compiled this at Ganden Monastery. So, Gola's presentation of that. These words were written by the renunciate Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen, who has heard many teachings. Through this merit, may all wandering beings quickly become conquerors through this path that has only one door to liberation. Having seen the 8 worldly concerns are like the dramas of lunatics. Oh, nice. What do they say? What's the thing there? Oh, snap. I watched some series on Netflix one time, and I remember this guy who was a very good actor. He was playing they were a detective, a guy and a girl. And he would, once in a while, he would say, oh, snap. And I had no idea what that meant. I'd had to look up in the Urban Dictionary. It kind of means like, oh, wow, that's really amazing, right? Having seen the 8 worldly concerns are like the drama of lunatics. Gendon Gyaltsen, with the degree of 10 fields of knowledge, and Sherab Sengye from Hartong with the degree of the 10 difficult subjects, live according to the conduct of rishis. Remember when I talked about the Heart Sutra, the rishis, whose words were authentic, they lived in isolation. They live according to the conduct of rishis in isolated mountain valleys and take this path as the essence of their practice. They have already urged me many times to introduce Mahamudra in this way. So they had received the oral teachings of Mahamudra just as Panchen Lama did and other lamas up till then, but it had never been written down before. The Gelupa, short lineage from Manjushri to Lama Tsongkhapa, down to these lamas. They have already urged me many times to introduce Mahamudra in this way. In particular, the great Ensapa, I think the fourth Panchen Lama, this one, was a reincarnation of Ensapa. Ensapa was a great Gelupa Lama. You remember, some of you know Thupten Wangmo? So when she first wanted to do 3-year retreat, she lasted about 2 months, 3 months. Lama had her build a little house outside of Tushita in Dharamsala. She was relatively wealthy. Her father, although she feigns not being that, her father had written or directed, written Gunsmoke or directed Gunsmoke?
He had
Yes.
done many things, including writing.
Yeah. So if you ever see, there's a TV channel like for, like old westerns, and there's the western, and Gunsmoke is on there, and I look, there's Meston, her family name was Meston, I can't remember his first name, he was like the writer or director. So when she was doing retreat, and she had refrigerator in her little house, and stove, and all sorts of food, and, all sorts of stuff, a doorbell. And Lama said, and Sapa, also, you shouldn't think that only you have to be like Milarepa. Milarepa, just a little white cloth and one bowl, and reach enlightenment. He said that was because Milarepa's karma. But you can also reach enlightenment with opulence around you. The exceptional person is not attached to it. He said he give the example of Gyalwan Sapa, who in the monastery, in his own, what do we say, labrang, his own lama's quarters, achieved enlightenment through the Mahamudra, with servants, and the fineries of what was accorded to the higher lamas like that. So you yourselves, you shouldn't think, oh, I can't do a meditation in my apartment. I have to go off and give away everything, and have no clothes, and just have to cut my wood every day. Don't worry. So in particular, the great Ensapa himself, the omniscient conqueror and lord of masters with attainments, has said, I have written, this is quoting Ensapa, I have written an explanation similar to the Lan Rim of the Kadampas, starting from the proper way to rely on the spiritual master, the guru, up to calm abiding and insight. A song of realizations as advice for myself and others, but without including at the end this path that has just been explained. I'm not able to write down the ultimate instructions of Mahamudra that are not well known in the land of snows. And then after that quotation says, what is not written down at that time, what was not written down at that time due to restrictions, was intended for a later time. This is understood by an assertion that is established, for example, by a statement in the Lotus Sutra. Since it is an object to be thoroughly realized by pristine wisdom of a Buddha, never tell those who take it upon themselves to write of this method that you are enlightened. Why? Because those who act as our refuge take timing into consideration. Things should be presented at the right time. I, Losantro Gelsen, who upholds the immaculate instruction of Sutra and Tantra, and the undefiled stream of blessings of those who actually practice this path, have also become a part of this lineage, starting from the unparalleled teacher of the Shakyas, means the Shakyamuni Buddha, all the way down to my own root guru, Sangye Yeshe, who knows everything, who's omniscient and sees everything, without introducing impurities of Samaya, the vows, the promises I've made. I composed this text at Ganden Monastery, Ganden Nampur Gyalway Ling. So before the beginning of the first day, I said at the end I would try to give a oral transmission of another Mahamudra text that Tilopa had given to Naropa, called Gangama. Do you remember? Given on the shores of the Ganga, but I don't have time. So maybe auspicious in the future we'll come back sometime, we'll talk about the Gangama, but similar kind of thing, but just a different language sometime. Also, we didn't get a chance to meditate so much, which is a shame, but my fault, my bad. I wanted to try to get to provide you with the framework. Rinpoche, Lama, other great beings, it doesn't matter, all that framework stuff, you'll hear it later, meditate. So, my bad. Well, maybe some advantage to hearing it. Many times we go to Rinpoche's course, it might be 10 years before the whole thing is presented. So sometimes, if you have a chance to, when Khenpo Rinpoche Losang Jampa comes again, maybe he would give a course on Mahamudra, you'll be a little bit prepared. Having heard this test, I've recited the words from both translations, I think from start to end. So in a sense, I've received this oral transmission from His Holiness and from other lamas. So in a sense you might think, okay, I'm empowered, I can practice this. I've received, in a sense, the oral transmission of the text, even though it's in English. So, I'm happy. Thank you very much. Let's do a dedication, final dedication. And remember, 2 stages of the dedication. Dedication mainly means trying to join up what you recognize as the merits that you've created, both today, this weekend, and in the 3 times. That's what all the merits you created in the past, all the merits you created now, all the merits you will create in the future. Dedicating everything toward your own achievement and enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. Sometimes in very brief stanzas they say, I dedicated these merits to the great enlightenment. What does that mean? It means, it implies that same process. The great enlightenment means when all living beings are enlightened. But the only way that you can dedicate your merits to that is dedicating your merits that you achieve enlightenment first, and then lead all the other sentient beings to enlightenment. That's conventional dedication. Then we'll meditate on this emptiness of the 3 spheres, to seal that so that those merits can't be destroyed by anger. Meditate on the emptiness of the merits that we've created, the emptiness of the goal dedicated to the great enlightenment, let's say, and the emptiness of the act of dedication, which is that aspiring that these karmas, these merits ripen that way, also empty of inherent existence. So sit comfortably. Let me take a sip of nectar here. Calm your mind. See if you can recall the clear light nature of your mind, what's called to bring to mind a remembering consciousness of this clear light nature. Even in an instant when the thoughts and images are staring you in the face, see their true nature as clear light nature of the mind. And within that clear state, recall that through this course, through the last week also, we've tried to generate positive motivation each time. By the force of that motivation and by the force of listening to the Buddha's teachings, having good thoughts during the period, we've created immense amount of virtuous karma, especially having some insight into emptiness. It's said that even having a doubt about emptiness, whereas before you didn't think things were empty, but now thinking maybe things are empty, shakes the very foundations of samsara. How wonderful we've created so much merit. May that merit not ripen in some banal, short-lived, temporary and permanent samsaric pleasure in the future, but in whatever way it ripens, may I associate with that this aspiration that it ripen toward my continued spiritual development from now until enlightenment, for the welfare of all sentient beings. making a firm determination. You've got a big inheritance from Aunt Mabel. I'm making a very firm determination. I'm going to put this away for my kids, for their families. Dedicating it, sealing it away so that it's not frittered away in some other way. And meditate the merits created that I'm dedicating, that we've created today, in the past, the present, and the future. They appear to the mind conventionally, but have no inherent existence. The goals dedicated to my spiritual development, up to and including enlightenment for the welfare of others, the state of Buddhahood, although objectively to my mind seems like something real, possibly real, it exists merely as an imputation. There's nothing existing from its own side, just as there's no self behind the appearance of an I to my mind. And the act of dedication, linking these merits to those goals, also is empty. It can't be found on any of the moments of that process. It's not the combination of moments that's a dedication. It's not something different than those moments. Dedication is just a name conventionally and legitimately attributed to those appearances, those moments, but is empty of any inherent existence.